you don't look at your family. In this instance, you look at the people who are listed, who are named, who are talked about, who were enslaved. I have discovered no new documents. I reused, rethought the documents that I have. We always know that we had slaves in Mauritania, in the rocks, and I always knew they came here as well. I just never, honestly, thought about it the way I should have. So, in the course of doing this talk, getting ready for this talk, I discovered a lot more. It's ongoing, with help with Hadley and Leslie at the Historical Society. We're talking about it, we're looking at records, there's more to look at that I won't be able to do while I'm here. It's an ongoing journey for me as much as it is for all of you. And I'm going to start with this. Who was Isabella Johnson? I want you to keep her name in mind as we're talking. We're going to come full circle to the church. There isn't a direct link yet that I know of from Barbados. The point being, though, there's a direct link with my family and this work, of course, and the people who worked for the Pophams and the Morris family. Most of them, obviously, as slaves. So keep in mind Isabella Johnson, and I will start you on the journey. It's a chronological journey, the journey of my year as I went through looking at the records leading us to this church. And forgive me, I have Parkinson's, and sometimes I'm going to probably need to sit or put my drink down so I don't spill it on myself, but I'm hoping to stand and talk and walk, and you all can just, as I said, interact with me, ask me questions as we go. So, next slide, please.
Is that like, yeah.
So I wanted to start with a little bit of background, obviously. And the Morris...
Not sure. Is that... It's nothing from mine. Is that someone... Sorry. Sorry for the entertainment. Andrew, is that something from you? Is that something from your? Oh my gosh! I don't know what that intrusion was. That was strange. Give me a second. I'm sorry. Trying to get back to a slideshow. Good Lord. Okay. Where were we? That was our... All right, I'm just trying to get back to the slideshow without being too conspicuous here. It was on, I'll just have to... I was just sitting here thinking, oh, this is great. Everything's like just humming along. Yeah, right, okay.
I'll get a few more people.
Yeah, that's right. All right, here we are. It's this. Jim Boulden shared. Hopefully it won't make me do all this stuff again. Rector. Of course it will. No, and Andrew, was there anything in your lab computer interfering with this that might have done that?
No, I haven't been doing anything. In fact, I wasn't even connected to the internet.
Is there one?
Enter the code you were given.
No, that's just... There it is. 1 9. Okay. Is that the slide where? Yep, there we are.
I'm not sure that extraneous one doesn't matter. Okay, sorry about that, everyone. Again, chronologically. So, the Morris brothers, Richard and Louis, left Wales before 1640. Richard Morris is our 8th great-grandfather. Lewis headed for Providence Island, which is off Nicaragua. It was many British people and people from New England were going there to try to find a new society, and it didn't work. They ended up in Barbados around 1650. So the two brothers, Lewis and Richard Morris, started to buy land. There were probably 200 plantations for sugar in Barbados. This is very early in Barbados history. This is when there were lots of little landholders before there was consolidation. And our brothers, the Morris brothers, would have had slaves brought in the slave trade, as everyone did, working in the plantations. But they didn't stay very long, 20 years. They decided a good place to buy land was New York. And they decided to go to the Bronx. And using money from Barbados, they bought 520 acres. And the record is Bronx land, that's how it's described. I think 520 acres in the Bronx today, I can't imagine what it would be worth. If you know Morsania, St. Anne's Church, the Morris family there, all that land to the Bronx River was a Morris family. And it was still in the family until about 1910. Some of it was sold off every year for years and years and years and years and years and years. Not our branch, unfortunately, we didn't get any of it. But I just want to give you an idea of what we're talking about. So this is Richard, our 8th great-grandfather, born in Wales. Lewis, and then Richard of Scarsdale, who we'll get to, the one who owned all of this originally. This Lewis is the most famous one. His son, Lewis Morris, signed the Declaration of Independence. His other son was Gouverneur Morris, who I think most of you know wrote the U.S. Constitution, and also is, I would call him one of the founding fathers of this great country. Our Richard was the State Supreme Court Justice of New York, who did not inherit the land in the Bronx. He inherited the land in Westchester County in Scarsdale, and that's where we get here. So we go Richard, Lewis, Richard. So I know they may not keep that in your mind, but just so you can see the timeline. So the next one, please. So when I went to Barbados with my partner, she wanted 8 days on the beach. I wanted 8 days in the archives. I took her to Northern Ireland the year before to do the Hill family, who lives here, William Hill Popham. So I dragged her around Northern Ireland. I've taken her around Southern Ireland, where the Pophams are from. There are no beaches. There's water, there are no beaches. So the compromise was, on my bucket list, I wanted to go to Barbados and do work on the Morris family. So I got 4 hours out of a week at the archives. That's her handwriting, because she's a teacher. You can't take photos, you can't scan, you can't, they haven't digitized most of the records. They're in the process of doing it, so there's lots for us to discover once that happens. But you have to sit there, there's somebody watching you, bring out every book, and all you can do is write the index. So this is just a flavor of what we found. And here's Lewis Morris in 1670, selling the land. You have Morris Richard, 1647, selling the land. A lot of these records will name enslaved people. Didn't have time to write them all down, but you see an example how important the enslaved people were to the value of the plantation. Because sugar, from what I've been reading, is one of the most intensive and most difficult things to process. And it took an enormous number of people to do it, and they often didn't live very long while doing the process. So I'm sure you've heard that history, but it's so very true. We found the archives by a sign hammered to a dead tree. That's my photo. They were very surprised when I showed up. There were about 10 people in there, so the record, you can do it, but you have to really try and say what you want. And I just love that because it just shows you, even this day and age of digital and family history, and family search and ancestry, sometimes you have to go to the source. So that process is still going on. I don't know where that will lead to me. So I thought today I would lead us from there to the Bronx to Scarsdale. So next, please. As I said to you, we bought 576 acres in 1670. In the end, the family owned 2,000 acres of the Bronx. And the Morris house, called the Gouverneur Morris house, that's probably the last known photo when it was a wreck in about 1910. And there's still parcels being sold all that time. And St. Anne's Church, if you've never been, is well worth it. That's where the sign of Declaration of Independence is. That's where Gouverneur Morris is. A lot of Morris family. It's a phenomenal church in a very, very poor deprived area. So it's quite a contrast with what the money came from to build it and where it is today. I'm not expecting you to read down all the names, but I like to read the names. In 1755, Westchester County did a census of all the enslaved over the age of 14, and you're expected to name them and give them their ages. This is my family's enslaved people working in the Bronx in 1755. The names, the ages, I don't trust the ages, but all the way down. And there would have been more, of course, because these are the ones over the age of 14. One of the things that's incorrect, go ahead.
No, I was just wondering, is that a first name and a descriptor?
Some of them are, yeah.
Sorry.
I'm looking at Peter Short, which is different. So Samson Blind, Mulatto Heron, we know what that means.
Okay, sorry.
Probably a relative. Long Betty, Little Hatch, Old Peter. So we have Peter Short and we have Old Peter. Old Peter was 59, a year younger than me. One of the fallacies about doing research in the African American community is the idea that it's impossible, there is no records, there are no names, there's nothing you can ever do, and it's untrue. It's a lot more difficult, but it's not true. The names are there. I've had this record for 40 years. It's online. You know, the whole Westchester 1755 is online. It's just that I've never really looked at it. So I do look at those names and think of all those people. Some of them could be descendants of people who came with the family from Barbados. So keep your eye on Peter Short. I have a theory about him. Next one, please. Another way, of course, is in the wills. You saw how valuable the enslaved people were. This is Lewis Morris's will. He died in 1762. He detailed where every single person enslaved went to which child in great detail. There is more about this than there is about the furniture. Furniture, it didn't about this. So you can see this Negro boy called George to my daughter. Boy named Peter, son of Dorcas, to my daughter Isabella. Sorry, to Richard. So Richard received, our Richard, who moved here, received a Negro boy named Peter, the son of Dorcas. So you even have his mother's name. I'm guessing that's Peter Short from the previous record. It's only 7 years later. And you can see all the names in the will detailed because it's very important and very valuable asset. Okay? So, that's our William Popham. You know it's him because he's wearing his Sons of Cincinnati little badge as a member of one of the officers of the Revolutionary War. So he married Mary Morris, Richard's daughter, in 1783 in Albany, New York. I've already been asked today if it's truly eloped. That's the story. Richard Morris was not very happy. This Irish immigrant, William Popham, who had no family, was married into this landed gentry family in Morris, in Scarsdale. But Mary and Richard gave Mary and William land, and they were in the Locusts by 1790, which is the house that's still standing here today. We can see them quite easily building their family. Richard Morris lives across the street. The other house, I don't know what it's called today. Morris Hunt House. Yes, it's right there. Yeah, that house still stands as well. So they just moved basically next door to another little piece of land. And my grandmother, great-grandmother, forgive me, when she wrote about it, let me get that out, so forgive me. grew up here and is buried out in the churchyard. She did memoirs and memories of time in Scarsdale. I just wanted to read you one thing she said. It's a page long, but this is her story she was told about the locusts here and the people who were enslaved. This is what she wrote. All the grandchildren were frequent visitors at the homestead. Your grandma and grandpa Bleecker used to reminisce about their sojourns there, about Mammy Surrey, Peggy, Bob, and the rest of the servants. She did not use the word servants, I changed that in the book. All were children of Mammy Surrey. She was Mary Morris's maid and was sent after her and with the rest of the goods and chattels when she married. So Mary was given a slave by Richard Morris to come here to live the Popham home when they married in 1783. In the Major's last years, William Popham, after his wife died, he made his home with his son William Sugar Popham in New York, and to his last days, Mammy Surrey took care of him. Whatever became of her, I do not know. So that wasn't important for the family to record whatever happened to her. I do know her daughter Peggy was living in New York, and I suppose Mammy Surrey went to live with her as well. But in the days when the grandchildren used to spend their summers in Scarsdale, she was the chief cook and general manager of the household. I've heard your grandmother Bleecker say how, as soon as they arrived, after greeting the grandparents, the next thing was to go downstairs and say, "How do you do?" to Mammy Surrey. And she was much offended if you didn't go to see her. I remember old Grandma Bleecker, your great-grandmother, saying, in her opinion, the Southerners had their reputation for hospitality very cheaply. She remembered how in her young days, when her mother would only say to her, "Mammy Surrey, go, someone's coming for dinner. Peg, go get the room ready," and they would get it done. The room and the dinner would be all ready in good time. So that's the one page of my great-grandmother's reminiscence, but it shows me how important the staff was, if you know what I mean.
I don't know why this is doing this. I'm sorry. I don't know where this is coming from. It's not in here. Okay, we're gonna go back. Does it go back? I mean, does it? If it's the spot, I don't know where it's coming from. Sorry, it's not me. This is not me. Oh, God. I'm so sorry. Okay, hang on. What is it? Is it the Google TV?
It's the TV itself.
Okay, anyone who wants to instruct me, otherwise I'm just going to have to go back through this again. Actually, let's turn it off and on again. Just, I don't know, the remote. Look on. There it is. Turn it off and on again, and that might just do it.
Yes, maybe you can go back over it. So, come in airplanes when you can.
I mean, I don't use this TV a whole lot, but I've never had this happen. I have no idea. Yes, go ahead. I'm gonna just go back through.
Any questions? Any observations? Yes.
Can you go to airplane?
Yeah.
You need to touch it.
Yeah, got it. So does it, like, Google TV just do that?
Yeah. TVs do that unless you disable that.
I don't know how to disable it.
You'll have to look in the menu. I can do it for you later.
Disable.
It's set the setting so it doesn't turn on, so it's just always on, so it doesn't flip over. And it seems like there's a lot of interference with the AirPlay. People don't have better on, but the settings there's like a display.
My branch, our branch, went to Ireland founded a Protestant community, took the land from the Catholics, of course, built the wall. They were plantation, they were planted by the English. And another branch in Somerset was going there. They were, as usual, the time to get Virginia got one. Of course, no one could go to Navy school in 1607, in the winter. It didn't even last a year at one point. So it's, yeah, the Pophams are all Somerset people. They're all a very well-researched, wealthy family. My branch, as I said, Barbados, went to Cork. 1630, 64. That's where our branch comes from. So yes, it is the same family, but not our family.
No, we're ready to, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I graduated Emmy Wilson Bleecker Road. Her father was Reverend William Wilson, and she and her husband met at the locust house as children. So we'll go to the next one, yeah. So what do we know from public records about the enslaved at this house? That's my picture. I'm not sure if it still looks like that way, but I'm getting a tour on Tuesday. I'm very pleased with that. In Scarsdale in 1790, there are 28 people who are listed as enslaved in the census. 3 of them in the Popham family at this house. You might know the laws were from 1799 to 1827 in New York. Slavery was being slowly but surely outlawed. It was not outlawed fully until 1827. However, most people, certainly Scarsdale, were no longer having been enslaved. In 1800, we had 4, and no family had more in Scarsdale. So it shows you that it was still very much part of the Popham family. In 1820, we had 2. Put my money on Mammy Sari. Sorry for the words, but that is described. That Mammy Sari was one of the 2, and one of her children was probably others. But because slavery was being outlawed, we started having in the census what they call free colored persons, FCP. So in the household there were 2 slaves and 7 free colored persons who could very well be her children. In 1830, we still had 6 free colored persons in the house. 1840, we had 3 in the Popham home. That was Waverly Place, New York, in the city. Obviously, the family would go back and forth between the 2 homes. I'm not sure which one would be worth more today, but the Waverly Place is phenomenal. We did not inherit that. But so William Popham died in 1847. There were still servants in the family through 1840, documented. Okay. Now, as I said, you can find names if you look, and I looked, and I found these names. So we know who some of them are. We had Long Peter, Short Peter. Well, Peter and Sarah, we know, are the parents of Mary Schofield, who you know about more than I do. But she was listed in the Scarsdale town records as an enslaved person of William Popham when she was born and baptized in 1801. You need to find her baptism. You don't know what church is in that. So we know Peter and Sarah were in the family. We know about Mary and their daughter. Fanny Sarah from my great-grandmother's in-laws. The children, Peggy, and then Bob and Liza, and then Isabella, who we'll get to in a minute. So it's just an example how, if you look, the names are there. And if someone says they're descended from someone who might have been a servant in Scarsdale, and if they can get themselves to one here, then they can find a lot more information about them. Okay? As I mentioned about Mary Schofield, this is from the Scarsdale Historical Society, which I had forgotten about, and I really appreciate you reminding me. So in 1802, a female was born to Sarah and Peter, slaves of the property of the said William Popham. That's in the town records. And they're going to call her Mary Schofield. Don't know why the name Schofield. And she's to be baptized 16th day, February 1803. Yeah, I need to try to find that baptism. Maybe in Manhattan, maybe in Eastchester. It's not going to be in White Plains, because that church wasn't founded yet. And then in the records, we find her again in 1822 when she was freed. That's just an example of what we can find if you're looking And that record has been online for years. It's the only time I've seen, that doesn't mean we don't want to keep looking, because we might find more. Again, an example. Thank you. You can move. Now, what I decided to do then is was going through this thinking, okay, well, before St. James Glass was founded, the family was going 3 miles up the road on the ponies and horse to Grace Episcopal in White Plains, which was founded in 1824. And the Pophams were very much involved in that founding of that church too. And it didn't take me very long to find, as an example, the baptism of John, a colored boy, living with William Popham, age 3, baptized in Grace Episcopal. I find this fascinating because parents aren't named. It was more important to mention that he was a boy of living with William Popham Sr. than it was to say who his family is, where he was born, who his parents are. Was he an orphan? Are we related to him? I don't know. But that's the kind of record you can easily find in Episcopal church records when you look. Here's another one. We saw earlier that we have Peggy, the daughter of Nanny Seri. Peggy and Margaret were one of the same names. So I'm convinced that in 1828, Margaret, a colored girl of Mr. Popham's, was baptized. Again, Grace Episcopal. I don't know if her age was 19, it just happens to say 19, but again, that's 2 examples that I was able to find very quickly. It's on the living to the locust. Okay? Now, we come to your church. What do we know? Well, we know that the church wasn't founded until 1849, long after slavery was outlawed. Here. We also know there's rumors that those stones out there in the churchyard might be escaped slaves who died. No proof of that whatsoever. I have no proof, there is no proof that I've ever heard of. I don't know that it's true. What's more interesting is what you can find in these records. I have had scans of them for 5 years and I've never bothered to look until this summer. So what do we know from here? Well, in 1853, Eliza was baptized here. My great-great-parents were her sponsors, Augustus Bleecker, Sarah Elizabeth Bleecker of Popham, Alethea H. Bleecker, and baptized by Reverend William Olson. But look at this, of slave parentage. The only time I can find in your records the word slave is on there. However, we are talking years after slavery was outlawed in this state. She's 12 years old, so she's not born a slave. Her parents are not named. Our family had her baptized, sponsored. So who is she? I don't know. But that opens up a number of possibilities in my head, and one for us to research. If she's of slave parentage, that means her family were slaves 12 years before, which means by definition they weren't living in New York. Which means by definition they came up here. For her, she was brought up here. So either her parents were slaves who escaped and were sent back, which was still the law in the whole country until 1865. You had to send slaves back, even if you were not a slave state. So if she was brought up here as a non-slave and her parents were still enslaved, they could have been sent back. There must be records of that. There would be articles, there would be something. But I was so surprised when I found the word of slave parentage in your records. Only time I've seen it. Just out of interest, of course, here's our William Hill Popham baptizing his child just right after. Just, the records just continue right on. So this is one for us to keep researching. Okay? So, we're going to come full circle now to Isabella Johnson. The reason I've kept her name going is end on a high note. So again, have her name in your head. Okay? You can go ahead. So, as I said, I showed you 1790, 1800, 1830, 1840. So here's William Popham's house here in Scarsdale in 1850. And then William Sherbert, he's dead after that, William Sherbert Popham. and this is what I discovered staring me in the face for years. Bella Johnson, it says 58, B for black, servant. She's the only B on that page. The one below it was mistaken, so I'm going to cross it out. Ignore that. But she's 58 years old in the Popham household as Bella Johnson. In 1860, she's with the Campbell family, it's the same house, it's still the locust. As a 75-year-old black woman as a servant in the family. Again, the only B that I can find very, very few. There are still black families in Scarsdale, but as far as somebody in a household, Bella stood out in my head, and I was thinking, she's 75 years old. She's not in the 1870 census, did she not? She's in two family, if she's in both censuses after 10 years, still in the family, she's very important to the family. Was she important to St. James to us? Let's look. Here she was. That is the first list. The list of your communicants, the first page of your first book, sitting there with your records. William Shorter Popham, the second wife Jane, her sisters Margaret Hill and Sarah Hill, they're the friends of the Whisperer. Charles Carmer, Mary Morse Carmer, Augustus Bleecker, Alethea Bleecker, Clara Sherbrooke, Mary Richard Popham, unrelated, were related to all of them. So the first 10 communicants of this church were all the family. It makes sense. I mean, they did give them that stuff. The 11th person on there is Isabella Johnson. I contend that she's the first person of color in your books. And she was that important that she was listed as number 11 communicant. And I really was really shocked myself. There's no other way of knowing who she was except you look at the records of the census. So putting the two together, you find that. So, what did we find next? Well, the burial of Isabella Johnson, age 90, in 1867. Isabella Johnson, February 28th, Cemetery of St. James, the last 90 years. Was she 90? Well, she was 75 something years before, so she probably wasn't 90, but she was obviously very old. Again, it doesn't say who she was, but she was allowed to be buried here. When I say allowed, I think you know what I mean, but it was not a situation where they would say no. I would say contend that she's the first person of color we can prove is buried in our churchyard. Okay, excellent. When Hadley and I started talking a few weeks ago, she said, oh, I have some of these records as well. We can look up where she's buried. Maybe find out exactly where she's buried. Well, this is fascinating to me. I won't bore you too much with it, but lot 236 is the Popham lot. She died in 1867, so I contend that she was buried in our family plot. Then, it says 294. In 294, we find John Johnston buying that plot in 1876. Someone crossed out and put that number on top. After giving it a fair amount of thought, my theory is she was moved, her remains were moved to the other plot of John Johnston. How is Isabella Johnson and John Johnston related? I don't know. Not yet. He's a white Scottish man who obviously had enough money to be able to buy a plot here. Why was she moved? That's the mystery we need to solve. That's it. So, if you go out to 294, which I did last night in the rain, and you've done as well, there is a stone for John Johnston. The book that you showed me, we know exactly where she's buried. There is no memorial to her. So I contend that's something to think about. Should we somehow memorialize her, knowing she's the first black communicant, knowing she's the first woman of color, person of color to be buried there, and we know where she's buried, as opposed to the theory about the stones up there. That's something I think for you as a congregation to think about. That's my talk. Any questions?
I have a question. Why do you use
free people of color was a column in the census that was decided on by the census takers. The person writing it in could have written in black, or C, or M for mulatto, or white. Obviously, most people were white. They did not put in, most of the time, they didn't put in the W. But they were always very clear in my head to put in the W, the M, or the C, or in this case, the B. Yeah.
You have relatives that are former slaves?
It's a very good question. Yeah. Do we know if we're related to any of these genetically? Not on mom's side of the family. We are on dad's side of the family. We have a Peak family in Utah who are descended from one of our plantations in Virginia. So we do have African American relatives who still hold the Peak name. On this side of the family, no proof yet. Mary Schofield is the one that I'm very interested in.
And you've done your DNA?
Yeah, my DNA is on there. Hopefully someone from Isabella Johnson's family, if she ever had children, will be on there as well. Once this gets out, I'm hoping we'll get some more information. Yep, Jacob.
Are there any records of William Popham actually freeing the slaves, or was that done?
Mary Schofield?
Yeah, the Mary Schofield one says she was freed. The thing is, you must remember, as plantations got older, the owners got older, many people freed their slaves in order to save money. It wasn't always done as an altruistic. Why she was freed in 1822, probably the pressure of the law, because the law was going to outlaw by 1827, but I don't know why. But yes, that is an example of him freeing something, but they said that she had enough means to go out on her own. But that's the only time that shows up in the Scarso records that I'm aware of. Yes?
15 Post Road, or 8 Sharon Lane.
8 Sharon Lane, off the Post Road. I just saw it as I drove in this morning. It's a beautiful house. But if you put in the context of get rid of the modern road, you can see behind it is Rochambeau.
It kind of is Wayside.
Yeah. I'm sorry, the other way, yeah.
Carstensen.
But you go up the hill and you get to here very quickly, you go over and you get to the Hill House, you get to where the vicarage was, you get to the Morris Pump Up. If you sort of get away from the modern demarcations, they're all within a minute walk of each other, really. And where I think the slave quarters that might still exist at the Popham House is on another road, and it doesn't look like it's part of a, but if you think about it as a 4 or 5 acre lot, then it's one farm.
Quickly. Some folks in town have surmised that the graves that we say were from runaway enslaved people are actually maybe Morris, from the Morris estate, enslaved people from his estate. Have you heard that? I mean, that's as speculative as the other theory, but...
Well, he died in 1809, and obviously the Morris family continued on. So he gave the land to the Pophams, and the Pophams then gave it to make the church. So it was Morris land. It was the Morris land.
Yeah, right,
and they
right.
were here from the 1780s.
And they were the largest enslavers in Scarsdale family.
We're trying to get to the 1790, 1800 census. The Morris family does not have any ticks under enslaved people.
Okay.
Maybe it's because of his age. Don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, and the Morses would be just as interesting to follow in that sense.
Yeah.
But I also, there's no proof. People said maybe the cemetery was used before the church was founded. There's no proof of that as well.
Right.
Because families like ours move stones from close churchyards in Manhattan. So there is one here that predates it.
That had been moved.
It's been
Okay.
moved.
Yeah. Okay.
You can see that the child was buried in 1836. So all they did is, when the churchyard was cleared, they just brought the stone up here to the family plot. But whether those stones had anything to do with it. But I come back to Isaac, because of slave parentage in 1853, that gives some credence to the idea there might have been someone coming through the escaping slaves coming to Scarsdale. Don't know. It's one definite for us to be continuing to research. Yes. Pophams are just right over here. There's a stone named the Popham Morris that I had put in 2006, I think it was. Then there's the Olsons. So there's the Carmers, the Pophams, the Hills. We have four vaults right there. And then 294 is just directly over here. There's a lot of bleakers. It's just by the bleakers. And the Johnston stone is quite, I mean, you can all go look at it now. It's quite nice. There's some money spent on that. It's much more elaborate than, say, Reverend Nelson's stone, which you probably read anymore, sadly. But the Johnstons had money. I just don't know the connection between Johnston and Johnson. It sounds like it should be, but we're not there yet. We're not there. Yes. Well, I'm gonna pour cold water on that because the Norris family were Quakers. No, don't think about it. There's plenty of records of Quakers who completely ignored the ban on slavery. So the Morris family of Morrisania, Lois and Richard, were Quakers. Now, Quakers are one of those ones who joined and then they obviously left it when the church was built, saying that it was Anglican. In my family, I have no proof of anybody being an abolitionist. None. And I think that pretty much shows you that's the case. Even the Quaker stuff. None of them. Thank you all very much.